All right, so I should be recording here. We are. Hello, this is David Perlman and
Heather Cox.
Steve helping a little bit as well. So this is National MS Office Hours. Today is Thursday, May 7th. We are in week 10 of the latest remote, or week 9 maybe, of the remote learning. With us today we have Deb McLeon, who is a IT leader at SUNY Oneonta, and she's going to be sharing with us kind of their transformation journey. And wow, is there a lot going on? We might even have to stay a little bit longer for those that would like to, because I'll keep recording till about 5:10 if we need to, Deb. So go ahead.
Excellent. Thank you again for the opportunity to chat with folks today. As Dave said, my name is Deb McLennan. I'm the Director of Systems and Data Center Management at SUNY Oneonta. Is it all right if I share my screen, Dave? I did put some PowerPoint together. I told you I might not,
yes.
But you know how I am.
Go for it. Oh, I know how you are. Go ahead. By all means, share out.
All right, let's see if this will actually work the way I expect it to. All right, are you seeing my presentation?
Looks good on our end.
Yes, we are.
Awesome. All right, so our IT organization employs about 45 extremely talented and driven employees. It is a truly great place to work, learn, and grow. I've been at SUNY Oneonta for about 15 years. I started back in 1998 and took a brief visit to Albany for a few years to learn bigger, stronger, faster before I decided to come back home to Oneonta. I'm a product of the SUNY system with degrees from SUNY Delhi and what used to be called the SUNY Institute of Technology, now called SUNY Poly. I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to share some of our adventures with you all today. So just briefly about SUNY Oneonta, we're located in beautiful central New York, just a short hop and skip to Cooperstown, New York. Our enrollment is about a little bit better than 6,000, and we have about 1,400 employees. So Dave and I were talking, and we came up with a few conversation points that he thought might be helpful and give me an opportunity to commiserate as we talk about, moving forward after, the events of this spring. So we're going to do a quick overview of the environment at SUNY Oneonta. We'll talk about some of the really cool events that have happened out in the wild in the last several weeks. I'll talk about our OneDrive migration project, part 62, because it seems like I've been talking about that project for years. I'll talk a little bit about training opportunities. They talked about them in the chat earlier on. Some of the stuff that we've done with the Microsoft retail stores, trainers and that kind of thing. And then maybe if we have some time, we'll talk a little bit about futures. So our environment, we are Microsoft's 365 A5 licensed. We bit the bullet and went Teams only last July. And I was talking with one of our sysadmins yesterday about how lucky we've been with some of the choices that we've made, and the fact that we didn't have to, be hybrid with Skype and Teams, along with all the other tools out there. And there are a bunch of other places where I'll talk about our luck, because it really, when things like what has happened happen, having the tools, having the infrastructure, having the environment underneath what you need to do, and not having to worry about things like capacity or worry about things like licenses or, whatever it might be, really makes it so that you can be creative and flexible and responsive for your institution. So this is kind of what we have. We're running the knowledge worker, light worker licensing using Azure Dynamic Groups. We moved our single sign-on ADFS environment up into Azure. So we have highly available single sign-on for all of our software as a service. We're running Blackboard in their SaaS environment, which is Amazon hosted. For the on-prem stuff, we're running VxRail with VMware, totally software defined, super fast stuff, and very resilient. And our Banner 9 environment is in that VxRail space. So moving remote, at first, things happened in a really I mean, everybody was the part of it, so you all know that it happened in a really weird way. Some of us went remote earlier. Some folks went remote later, so it was kind of this phased in approach. And one of the things that I found really interesting, from my perspective, because I've had so many roles on our campus, over the last 15 to 20 years, depending on what number you want to use, is that we had a bunch of folks that could be flexible, and we shifted a bunch of resources into just helping users make the transition to working remote. So whether it was setting up, VPN and getting them added to VPN groups and the VPN client installed, or whether we were getting them set up, putting their, office computer in a space so that they could remote desktop into that machine so that they can work from home just like they can from the office. It was really, everybody pitched in, did the work, worked with users, talked about what method worked best for them. What do they need? Do we need, is VPN work for you, or just need to connect here and there? And it really was, in the end, I thought a very successful endeavor. One of the things I thought was really interesting is, like, the second week, we had a bunch of folks come back and say, okay, you've been talking to us about this OneDrive migration project, and we've asked to go last. Can you move us now? So we did. We work with a bunch of departments in moving their department share content out to SharePoint. We work with a number of users and using the SharePoint migration tools to do on-demand migrations. Oops, went too far. The thing I thought was really interesting, though, is that, when you have these high anxiety, high stress situations, folks tend to not present their best selves. And the thing that I thought was really cool in this whole thing was that every interaction I had with somebody was positive. I didn't have those cranky users that I was used to working with. I didn't have the, I need it now. It was everybody, how can you help me? What do I need to do? How are we going to get there next? Thank you for what it is, and it really, it really made doing the work that much more fun, to be honest. So you basically taking advantage of, trying to make the best case you can out of what you're working with. The other thing that came out of this is that we've actually, that's why I said we did OneDrive to part 62. We've actually started using the SharePoint migration tool to migrate 100 users a week. And we're skipping this week because it's finals for us. But we're going to go back to that next week and hope to have the rest of the users done probably by the end of the month. And then we can take a serious look at what we're doing with department shares and SharePoint or Teams or whatever we decide that next iteration is going to be. So a couple really interesting things happened as we were moving into Teams. So one of the things I thought was really cool is that we got administrative support all the way from the Office of the President telling us that we were using Microsoft Teams, IT was supporting Microsoft Teams, and if you need help with Teams, contact IT. So I got a call from the convener of our college senate, and on a Friday afternoon, and basically he said, I need a Zoom license because I want to do polling. So over the weekend, I figured out how the Poly tool worked. And then Monday morning for a 2 o'clock Senate meeting, we moved the entire college Senate from a classic Teams site into Teams, added all the members, and lit Poly, did some testing with them so that they could do really important college Senate voting business that Monday afternoon. There were 5 of us on a Teams chat like this, and just the collaboration was spectacular. There was a lot of trial and error, and in the end, they were able to get 72 of the 80 folks connected, able to participate in the team and vote successfully by 3 o'clock that afternoon. So it was incredible. So there were folks from the library committee on that Senate meeting. So the next week, we did the same thing with the library committee, using the same tools and moving them over. And, we're getting, these emails and requests through our ServiceNow application. Can you help my committee do this, or can you help my group do that? So, and these were just ad hoc things that, we've got this stuff we've got to do. How are we going to do it? So then I got a call from our admissions office. They wanted to do virtual tours. So they have this virtual tour already online. They had a vendor come in and actually do this. So basically you can go to this website and you can walk around campus virtually. What they wanted to do is they wanted to use Teams to narrate this virtual tour. So they're actually, because we can't have the on-campus tours for the admissions folks right now, they are using Teams to narrate the virtual tour and using screen share as they go through the virtual tour online. I talked to Pam yesterday, and she's really happy with the way it's working. The students are happy with the way it's working, and they've been able to do quite a few tours and outreach this way. They also asked if we could help do a couple of open houses. So we were able to do, we did a call with a premier field engineer and talked a little bit about Teams live events, decided that our population really didn't need that big of a production. So our School of Economics and Business did their admissions open house via Teams. Dean Thomas asked me to sit in on that call, on that meeting. So they had a bunch of prospective students connect via Teams, video, audio. Dean Thomas and 4 of his School of Business faculty members were online. They talked about their, the School of Economics and Business. And I learned a bunch. I learned that of some 16,000 business schools in the world, just 5% have achieved AACSB accreditation. And that being a institution with a Beta Gamma Sigma Honor Society chapter is also a big deal for the campus. And so the thing that was really cool about this is that you've got the faculty, you've got the dean, and then you got a bunch of students, and they're all interacting in this Teams meeting. And what we were able to do is we just created an environment where the technology didn't matter anymore. They were able to just talk. So the dean talked about his pride in his program. All of the faculty got to talk about their pieces and their majors. We've got economics, finance, and accounting, management, marketing, information systems, and then some professional accounting. And they talked about their programs and talked about their passion, and the students are just eating it up. It was an amazing session. So
this is the part I interrupt you real quick, Deb, because, I love this, but here's like that fear of falling off the cliff, right, that we were talking about. And how do we roll these things out, and how do we get adoption, and all these things we always struggle with. There are always these IT problems. And Deb, in one of our offline chats, you said, all of a sudden recruiting, right, the folks in student recruitment who are facing all these challenges, all of a sudden, guess who became the biggest advocates, right? And how many people, you have 20 people or so in that area kind of working on stuff, and all of a sudden they're pitching in and helping set up teams. Can you just spend 30 seconds on that, or am I making up stuff?
Pamela Hilton, who works in our admissions area, which is part of our enrollment management group, she contacted us and said, okay, so we want to use Teams, but we don't know enough about it. So she and I spent half an hour. She's a real savvy person. She's used Zoom, she's used other tools, and she just really wanted us to walk through how to do this. I set her up and she took off. And then as they needed things, they'd come back to me. She put Dean Thomas in touch with me, who was the dean of our School of Economics and Business. He sat with me for a half an hour, and he said, okay, I want you to show me how to do this. So we sat and I ran him through. We did PowerPoint just like I'm doing today. And he's like, I think I have it. Would you mind sitting in? So I sat in on the open house, and then we got the other faculty members connected, and they chatted for about 5 minutes before the students started to connect, and just talked about, moving back and forth and who was going to drive when the PowerPoint came to this. And it was really, it was like being in a conference room. And it was really cool because they didn't need me. I sat there, I lurked in the background, and they did it all. And
that's like perfect IP,
Deb. Powerful part.
That's awesome. Love that.
So we made the technology easy enough for them to just do what they needed to do. They can now conduct their business, and they don't need me anymore. and they can then, let their friends know, go talk to Deb, she'll get you set up, and then they won't need her anymore either. So that's, like I said, that's really powerful, so the thing that I thought, and it, it's hard to articulate. So Dean Thomas was so pleased with the way that open house went that he had his secretary schedule their Beta Gamma Sigma induction ceremony. And again, she asked me if I would mind sitting in the background. So they had 13 students that they were inducting this semester. And, I joined the call, 5 minutes early, I'm sitting here, and Dean Thomas is in his regalia. And so is Dr. Lisa Flynn, who is, the chapter president or whatever it is that the faculty member that basically convenes the chapter. They're both in their regalia. They're taking this really seriously. They have a custom background behind them of our welcome center. So they're totally SUNY Oneonta, and they had 4 seniors that were Beta Gamma Sigma members talk about service, talk about how important the society was to them, their experience in the business program, and their pride in helping to induct the next group. Dr. Flynn talked about the responsibilities of an honor society member, and then at the end, Dean Thomas says, I'm not sure how this is going to work. He says, but we're all going to do the pledge together. So they sat there for 30 seconds and they did the pledge together. So you've got 20 people talking at the same time, and the coolest thing for me is that the screens are moving in teams. So as the mics are picking up these different people with the different inflections in their voices, you're getting different pictures in the 2x2 screen. It was like a montage, so you would see Dr. Flynn and Dr. Thomas, and then you would see the students flipping in and out. And it was just incredibly powerful. We got all done. Everybody hung up, and Dean Thomas came back in an instant message to me, and he says, that was fantastic. And they were just so pleased with the way that the ceremony went, given that, the situation was as bad as it could be for the campus. They couldn't get those students in the room. They couldn't give them their cords. They couldn't, present them with their plaques. But they did this ceremony, and it seemed to be meaningful to everyone, and I think the fact that we were able to do it, make it easy for them, and have it be meaningful for them in the end was just, it was amazing. So this is all coming from a systems person. I know that's a lot of emotion from somebody at systems. So I'm going to transition.
There we go.
And we're going to talk tech. So when I was talking about being lucky, we had just redeployed our remote desktop gateway service in a clustered environment behind our Kemp load balancers. So this is our remote desktop environment. We've got a bunch of our One Identity tools out there that the sysadmins use every day. So this basically, if you're not in a group, you don't see the things that you can't have access to. I have access to everything. So you see everything that we have lit in our remote desktop environment. Down at the bottom is the graph. So this is today. No, this is this week. So Justin St. Ange, one of our sysadmins, we had this up and running, and we were doing this for internal purposes. And so what happened was we had a couple of things. We had students that either didn't have decent devices at home or didn't have the right kind of device. So you had a Mac user that needed Microsoft Access. You had somebody that had Chromebook that, they needed to do some heavy SolidWorks work or something like that. So we created Virtual Office and Virtual Lab. So Virtual Office is basically just remote app with applications installed so that you can go in a wrapped environment and run, our, the food processor, which is for our food service department. And then, we have SAP, and there were other applications. We installed Office here so that you could run Access. I think SPSS is out here, and some other applications. Then we went to the next level and we actually installed virtual labs. So we spun up 11 virtual machines for folks that needed maybe a little more horsepower or just needed an environment where they could go and do things. And this environment all sits on this remote desktop service. So this is kind of on the left-hand pane, you can see what we put underneath it, all the servers that are running, and then an overview of what actually is happening in the background. We actually do most of the remote stuff in the RDP gateways. So that's for users connecting back to their offices and for all this other stuff that we lit. And it gets a lot of traffic. We have 2 remote desktop gateways behind the Kemp, and that RDS cluster is also behind the Kemp. So we have load balancers out there so that we, can basically manage the load. And all of that's running on our VxRail environment. So, that's the super fast, super beefy, totally highly available environment. So then we're like, okay, so we have physics students that need to connect to SolidWorks. They can't do this from home. So we actually went out into the GitHub repository and found Remote Lab. And over the course of 3 days, our team lit it, tested it, secured it, and made it available for our Physical Science 128 lab. So this is a physical computer lab that we allowed physics students to actually connect to these desktops. We had to modify the login and logout scripts a little bit because they didn't work that great, and we updated the web config to add our remote desktop gateway so the students can connect. We made it so faculty needed to request their students to have access so that we could put them in a group and only those students could get in. And then we decided that if we needed to expand this, we do this with other labs. So we're doing this on request. We have the horsepower behind it to run it if we need to. And again, we had a faculty member call and say, what are we going to do? And, our team went, and again, that's that resilient, flexible, creative group, just did their own thing. So then we went and found all of the software that we have for home use, created knowledge base articles in our ServiceNow application with instructions on how to get the software, and included in this build your own computer lab concept, how to connect a virtual lab, virtual office, or remote lab, so that they could go in one document, find all the stuff they needed to be able to figure out how to connect to the tools they needed for their classes. And then when we were done with this, we created a telecommuting resources page with everything that we could think of to throw out here to make it easy for our faculty, staff, and students to come in here and get what they needed when they needed it. And this is all over, 2.5, 3 weeks. So, like I said, the team has just been fantastic. They've done unbelievable work in, getting these things up and running, trying to make sure that things are secure. We work closely with our IT security offices to make sure that the stuff that we're running is the way it should be, but it just really has been fantastic. So then in the midst of all this, we're having our conversations with, our fantastic Microsoft team, and we're talking about, all right, so now the IT organization as a whole is supporting all of these people doing all these fun and fantastic things in teams. And half of us are like, like Dave said, we're on this cliff. So we worked with Mike Barbado and the team in the Microsoft retail store in Buffalo. And thanks again to Emily for all the work that she did on that. And set up 2 sessions Fridays at 10 o'clock for the Teams 100 and 200 level training. We did this with a reason. So we wanted Teams training for IT staff, but we also wanted a pilot because it's something we can do for other areas. Fantastic sessions. Everybody that gave me feedback had positive feedback. When's the next one going to be? And it really was helpful for us because that gave us a more broad base of folks that can help us support the users out there. As we do with pretty much everything, IT staff went first. They're my guinea pig. If we need to do something, we need to test something, I'm going to inflict it on our folks first. And again, I'm glad I did because I thought it was really helpful. So we've talked with our Teaching Learning Technology Center, our Faculty Center, and a couple of our deans. And I'm working with them to try to set up the next session so that we can get them in, get them trained, and then start focusing on faculty. So out of some of this, and like I said, I want to say this again, it says it on the slide, but our Microsoft team has been great. We work with Mike, Dave, Josh, and Kurt all the time. They answer my dumb questions. They even answer my not so dumb questions. And it really has been, such a great partnership, and it's such a great resource to have behind me and something I can offer my team so that we can continue to do these things. So when I talk about, leveraging opportunities, Dave sent us something about this Blackboard and Microsoft Teams integration. So within, what was it, a few hours from the time Dave sent it to me, we had it up and running and we were testing it. And it's a little clunky right now. It takes you to a weird frame, does some odd stuff. So we're working through that. But there's potential. So with that potential, we had conversations with our Teaching Learning Technology Center and Justin and Joel, who is our Office 365 admin. So we've now started, they lit it Tuesday, the school data sync. And we're looking at how that works with Blackboard. It sounds like we're going to do some, as Oneonta always does, we're going to do some of our own stuff to try to make it easier for the folks to get in. Because what we want to do is we want our students to come in and our faculty to come into Blackboard. That's the one stop. And we want them to access the class team from Blackboard. We don't want them to have to go to a second screen. We don't want them to have to, do two things. We want them to go in through what we call our portal, because that's what we're using Blackboard for. And we want them to be able to get to their class team from their course in Blackboard. So we're making pretty good headway on that. We're bringing our teaching learning technology folks in today to do some internal testing. I have my 3 ITS Teams 101 courses in Teams and Blackboard. So, we're doing some fun stuff there. Our plan is to pilot that for summer session, which starts on Monday. And then, hopefully we've got a few professors that we think we can lean on, and then deploy that for all the courses in the fall. The last thing I'll mention is that, we had some folks talking about Intune on the chat earlier. We've had some conversations with Mike. Mike was great to bring an engineer in for us to have a conversation with about Intune. In the conversation with Justin and Brady, we determined that we really have all the prerequisites. Everything's sitting there waiting to go. So we're going to flip the switch and do this over the summer, and hope that we can revolutionize the way that we manage our desktops on campus, so that when we all go back to whatever the new normal is going to be, we can make things easier for our imaging teams in our desktop support areas and our labs and learning spaces areas. And the other thing too is that we want to make it easier for us to get metrics out of these things so that we can help do better jobs with cyclic replacement and upgrades and those kinds of things, to kind of try to make those more seamless and get them off the plate so that folks don't see them and don't care about them anymore, and it just happens in the background. And I think we'll find some pretty good success in these things. So I think I've gone right to that ragged edge again. And that happens to be my last slide. So again, thank you so much for the opportunity to, talk about what Oneonta's been up to. And then, like I said, we can commiserate a little now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Deb, first off, thanks for really taking the time to kind of open the kimono a little bit, share kind of what that experience has been like, both professionally and personally. I mean, we've had a lot of conversations over the last however many months, and we're all kind of dealing with this uncertainty, and against the backdrop is this whole thing around budgets, right? And Deb, isn't going to get into that. I will say that I'm having conversations at the state level and with leadership for the institution of SUNY around, how can we do more with less, and what does this really look like, and how can we operationalize, some of the investments that we've already made in Microsoft. And, Deb, I appreciate you, because I know at times I've pushed you a little bit. Even sometimes some of this stuff, is, it's challenging, right? We're all getting out of our comfort zone. I'm right there with you. I'm trying to figure out how I have conversations with, chancellors directs, right, about how do we take whatever that budget number is, and how do we extrapolate that across 64 institutions, right? And so, we're all just different individuals and people's working in organizations trying to help them meet the needs of our faculty, staff, and students. And I just think it's so important that we're willing to do that. So thank you first off. Let's get to some of the questions, and I'll try to read off some of those. I know Heather has to go at some point. She has to go now. She's giving me that look. I don't think it was a pressure imbalance.
Hi, Heather.
Something to do with kids. Thank you, Heather. So,
yeah, so I'll be back next week, guys, and we're gonna talk a little bit more on the instructional side. So get ready for a little change of pace. But you guys are awesome, and keep the conversation going.
Thank you,
Bye.
Heather. Cheers.
Hi, Heather.
So, thanks. So, Deb, one of the questions that came back, I believe it was from Jose. I think it was from Jose. We've already. Anyone know of a way to pull what SDS classes were activated in PS? So PS, let's see.
PowerShell, sorry.
PowerShell.
So, hang on, I will look, because I have 16 subject line SDS emails in my inbox from Justin and Joel over the last couple of days. So, it looks to me like they had some issues adding owners and members. So they have created some PowerShell stuff. And I will go through this email that's 6 pages long and grab you some links and pop them into the community call.
Awesome.
Thank
And
you.
like, if there's any scripts that you found particularly useful in PowerShell and you want to share those, not looking to create a lot of work, but whatever you can do, that's awesome, Deb. Hopefully that helps a little bit. And again, thank you for that. From Mr. Murphy, are you going to use Microsoft Intune only, or Intune with co-management configuration?
So we have, that was when we talked about some of the prerequisites. So we're already running the System Center Configuration Manager. We're looking at the Cloud Configuration Manager as well. So we're planning to, leverage what we are already doing, because we're already building packages and collections and stuff like that. We're going to leverage that along with what we're doing with Intune.
Excellent. Excellent. Let's see. You made some comments there. Follow up. Are you using Intune for your Mac deployment?
Well, we haven't lit Intune yet, so no, we're using Jamf right now. We don't know if we're going to be able to go completely, cold turkey to Intune, because we're using a lot of scripting to do a lot of stuff in Jamf that we're not 100% certain that we're going to be able to get all the functionality in Intune that we need. So we're going to test.
Awesome. Awesome. So Greg said that they're using SCCM in the Cloud Gateway Management. So I think you're well aligned there. Are you looking at moving over to Intune for Macs? And I think you kind of answered that question, right? You may be dipping your toe in the water, but you're not all the way there yet.
Well, I think it's because we have two very different configurations that we run. So we've got the stuff that we put in our labs and learning spaces, which are these, the multiple use stations. So the Jamf stuff that we do for the labs, is locking it down and making it so that, only, special certain groups of people can install things, those kinds of things. Whereas you have the other side of the house, which is our desktop. These are the client side computers for things that are in offices and that kind of thing. So we're thinking that some of the stuff that we do for the desktop side, we probably can mimic in Intune. We're not sure about the labs and learning spaces machines, because we do so much with those. Like, we don't use deep freeze. We don't use any of those tools. We create an image, we lock them down, and that sits that way for, a year, so we image our machines over the summer, and we do our summer labs refresh every year, pulling in new machines, trickling down, that kind of stuff. So, for us, we're just not sure yet.
Okay, no, that's great. Steve, do you see anything else in the community call channel in terms of questions? you're on mute, Steve, so I can't hear you when you're speaking.
Yeah, there's nothing else in the community
Now they're
content.
letting me
Okay.
off easy.
They did. But, again, we're all working so hard. So, I have a whole bunch of questions, but again, we've spoken a lot, Deb. I know the team's spoken with you. So here's the key takeaways I see, Deb, right, is, as an IT leader, right, you're spending all this time out of IT, right? Speaking with deans, speaking with recruitment and missions. I love that part of the story where you said, they know now to come to speak to you. And within about a half hour, all of a sudden, people are taking this on their own and they're running with it. And the story in terms of that honor society for your business school, I think it was your business school, that's just, that's one of those moments, right, where when that dean and talks to your provost and says, hey, so they have a new provost, don't tell anybody, at SUNY Oneonta, hey, what is IT doing, for educational outcomes? I mean, what a great story, right? It's no longer about, oh, IT, so if you want to get aligned, right, as an IT leader, and I don't care if you're in K through 12 or you're in higher ed, you're in research, right, trying to find those champions out in the business. And I've been having probably a year-long conversation with the CIO that Deb works for, trying to line those pieces up, right? So when you're focused on educational outcomes in IT and you're aligned with your provost and your deans, man, your life is so much easier because it's not about what does this cost, how long it's going to take. Yeah, cost absolutely is in there. But, I hopefully, Deb, it sounds like, right, you're making a difference in education, not just remote learning piece, right? You're touching the students and the faculty in a way that maybe IT didn't always do before. I mean, you do a lot of stuff there, so I don't think that's a fair statement. But, what a different story it is about what IT is doing at SUNY Oneonta. Is that?
Well, I think it's really important that in times like this, the campus realizes that, they've got a strong partner. And, they can lean if they need to, and they did, and I'm really, really pleased with the way that the teams, our service desk, desktop support folks, our programming teams having to switch, so much, from the banner side of the house. There were so many things that are still going on in that space. And then you got, my group, our systems team, who I can't say enough about, when Dave talks about the fact that, I'm out meeting with deans and, and doing this outreach and that kind of thing. That's because my team doesn't need me as much as anybody else does, I guess.
Don't worry, we still need you. We still need you.
No, but they they do their jobs, and they're passionate about it. Talk about, Rick and Walter have done, a tremendous job. We went live with VxRail a year ago, and we've moved our entire environment, save 6 virtual machines, to the new VxRail environment.
Excellent.
So, it's just, they work hard. They want to do quality work. They want to support the students. Half of them went to Oneonta, so they're alum. And it's important to them that they, continue to do work, and it gives me an opportunity. All I have to do is mention something, like I talked to Justin and Joel about SDS last week and said, I really would like to look at this. And I had it Tuesday, because
awesome.
They want it too,
Awesome.
So it's that kind of environment that I get to work in, and it gives us opportunities to go, do these, scary, edge of the cliff kind of things, because I've got the team to, if we don't get it exactly right, it doesn't take us long to recover.
Awesome. So we'll take one last question, Deb, from Bill Webster, and take about a minute, maybe or two to answer, and then we'll end this session for today. But did you have any issues with file path length limits when moving to files from OneDrive and Teams to OneDrive and Teams?
We did initially, and that was a Server 2008 limitation. So we actually shot a Server 2016 upgrade on the file service, and I think we had to step it. I think we had to go 2012 first, then 2016. We did that over the course of a week, and that removed our path length limit issue because it was a server OS issue for us and not, a OneDrive problem. The thing that we have run into is folder redirection issues for areas where we've used group policy to do make their home directory redirect to the My Documents folder locally. When you light the OneDrive folder redirection process, if that's already in place, it won't overwrite it. And if you flip the group policy to say don't do that anymore, it doesn't undo it. So we basically went and found some, and again, more PowerShell to set those Windows shell folders back to defaults so that when we did the OneDrive flip and added them to the new group policy, they could get the protect your files screen.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you, everybody. Deb, thank you very much for sharing. You know, I love hearing the stories, the partnerships. A couple of other takeaways. Listen, if you have things that you don't know or you need help with training on a wide range of things as it relates to Teams, accessibility, the stores will do this as many times as you want. Jeff, you still have your hand up, I see. If you want to have a question, I can, I guess you're just raising that as a sign of solidarity. Okay. You know, the stores are out there. If the store near you has, you know, we have people that are in remote work situations, right? New York State. I have not left the house for much of anything other than run around in circles at one of the local parks. You know, Deb's facing those same things. You know, there's a lot of challenges across the country. We'll find somebody at one of the stores to help you out, do Teams training, as many as you want. We're training 1,000 faculty staff members a day in New York City right now, right? So again, thank you, Deb. Thank you, community, and really appreciate everything you're all doing. And I actually asked my children to send an email to each of their teachers in K through 12, you know, just kind of thanking them for what they're doing, right? And so, again, thank you for all those that have that instructional add-on, and be safe out there. Thank you, Deb.
Thanks, guys. Have a good week.
Stay safe, everybody. Thank you. Thanks, Steve.
All right. Thanks, Dave. See ya.
Bye.